I stood in the middle of that ruined rest stop, empty, frozen in time. And when their car disappeared, I understood. They weren't coming back. It had been my father's idea. A graduation celebration, he called it, even though there wasn't much to celebrate. I hadn't walked the stage. I'd barely been allowed to fill out college applications. Waste of time, he said. You'll be back here flipping burgers before winter. So instead of a cap and gown, I got a seat in the back of our dented white SUV, wedged between a cooler and a rolled-up sleeping bag that smelled like mildew. It was supposed to be a road trip to Georgia. Just the four of us, Dad, Mom, my older brother Eli, and me. Dad controlled the music. Eli controlled the jokes. I sat in silence, watching trees blur past while they laughed at things I didn't understand. Or maybe I just wasn't meant to point. 3 days in, we stopped at a rest area. In southern Alabama. Nothing around but dry grass, 2 flickering vending machines, and a public bathroom that reeked of bleach and sadness. I remember the heat, it clung to your skin like a punishment. I asked if I could stretch my legs. Eli snorted and said, "What? Legs?" Dad didn't even bother to respond. I left my phone charging in the car. I wasn't planning on being gone long. Just a quick bathroom break. I remember staring at the cracked mirror, the kind that makes you look warped and crooked no matter how you stand. I washed my face with freezing water from the tap, stared at myself, and thought, maybe I'm the problem. When I stepped back into the sunlight, blinking from the glare, the parking spot was empty. No SUV. No Dad. No Eli. No mom.at. First, I laughed. I actually laughed. Thought it was a prank. I walked around the building, checked the far side of the lot. Nothing. I sat on the curb and waited. 5 minutes. Then 10. Then 20. I told myself they'd be back any second. Maybe they were teaching me a lesson. Maybe I'd said something wrong. Maybe I was imagining things, but the sun didn't lie. An hour passed. Then 2. A trucker asked if I was okay. I said yes, my family was just inside. I said it like I believed it. But they never came out. The thing about betrayal is, it's not always loud. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it's just absence. I replayed every moment. Every insult Eli had whispered in my ear. Every time Dad called me extra weight. Every time Mom looked away. None of it prepared me for this. I was 18. Hungry. Lonely. Sweating through my last clean t-shirt. No money. No phone. Just a pack of gum in my pocket and a heart too stunned to beat properly. I could have called them. I could have borrowed someone's phone and begged them to turn around. But something in me, something that had been crushed for years, stood up instead. I approached a woman with 2 kids and asked if I could borrow her phone. "Sure, sweetheart," she said, eyeing my torn jeans. I dialed the number the trucker had quietly scribbled on a napkin before leaving. Not my dad. Not Eli. Not even Mom. I called a shelter. "Hi," I said, voice dry as gravel. "I need help. I think I've just been left behind." And just like that, my story didn't end there. It began. The shelter in Savannah was tucked behind a faded blue church with boarded-up windows and flower beds long since surrendered to weeds. The woman on the phone, her name was Sheila, had given me directions with the calm certainty of someone who answered calls like mine every week. Maybe every day. By the time I arrived, the sun was slipping behind the trees, painting the sky in pinks and purples I didn't feel worthy of noticing. I was given a donated t-shirt 3 sizes too big, a pair of soft but mismatched socks, and a paper plate of spaghetti that tasted like warmth and salt and survival. I didn't talk much that first night. There was a girl near my age sobbing in the bunk next to me, and an older woman praying under her breath across the room. I lay on the cot, staring at the ceiling, wondering what I was now. Not a daughter. Not a student. Just a ghost in dirty sneakers, drifting on someone else's kindness. The next morning, I wandered into a little diner a few blocks away. The sign read Dottie's in chipped red paint, and the inside smelled like bacon and burnt toast. I wasn't planning to beg. I just wanted a cup of coffee, something hot to hold in my shaking hands. I never got the coffee. What I got was Marla. She was behind the counter, middle-aged, strong arms, buzzed haircut, and a cigarette voice. She took one look at me and said, "Bathrooms for customers." I lost my wallet, I lied. "Just moved to town. Looking for work." She stared at me, long and hard. Then pointed to the back. "Dishwasher quit yesterday. You steal from me, I'll skin you. Start now." That was it. My first job. The work was brutal. Grease that clung to skin. Fry baskets that cut your fingers. Floors that never stayed dry. I worked in the shadows while the regulars laughed and ate in the light. And I didn't care. When Marla handed me $30 in crumpled bills after my shift, I nearly cried. It smelled like fryer oil and hope. That night, back at the shelter, I used their computer to search for how to replace a state ID. I made a list: DMV forms, shelter as a mailing address, maybe a prepaid phone from Walmart. I searched for cash gigs, tutoring ads, anything. I didn't sleep. I was too busy building. Around 3 a.m., I sat at the kitchen table with a pen someone had left behind and a napkin from Dottie's. My fingers trembled as I wrote it: Noelle Wren, not the name on my birth certificate. Not the name they used when they yelled. Mine.it looked like nothing. Just ink on a cheap napkin, but to me, it was a beginning. The next day, I pinned that napkin inside my backpack like a secret passport. I didn't know where I was going. But for the first time, I had proof that I was still here. Still standing. Still mine. The first voicemail came 2 days after I started at Dottie's. Sheila from the shelter flagged me down at dinner and handed me the cordless phone, her eyes unreadable. Someone's asking for you. Says she's your mother. I took the call. In the office, heart pounding like I'd been caught stealing something that belonged to me. Mom's voice came through the line, syrupy and strained. Noelle, honey. It was all a big misunderstanding. Your father, he didn't mean to leave you. We turned around. We waited, we really did. I was so scared when you weren't there. In the background, I heard Eli laughing. Then Dad, barking, tell her to stop being dramatic and come to Rick's already. The phone slipped from my ear. I put it back slowly, like it might explode. I'm fine, I said flatly. You don't have to call again. I hung up. They did call again. And again. The shelter voicemail filled with familiar voices doing unfamiliar things, apologizing, pleading, pretending. One of them even started with, "Hey kiddo, bet you're just sulking," before fading out like static. I listened to one message. Just one. That was all I needed. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just walked to the corner store the next morning and bought a prepaid cell. New number. New name. New life. I walked to the bank that afternoon and opened an account under Noelle Wren. They asked for ID. I handed over a printout from the DMV confirming my application. The teller raised an eyebrow, but didn't ask questions. New start. She asked casually, something like that. Marla found me a week later scrubbing the same sink twice, lost in thought. You okay, kid? I changed my number, I said. I don't want them finding me again. She looked at me for a long moment, then nodded once. Good. I moved out of the shelter 2 weeks later. A woman at the diner named Lacey was subletting a one-room space above a laundromat across town. The ceilings leaked during storms. The window didn't open. But it had a door that locked and 4 walls that didn't judge. I paid rent in cash and cleaned the floors of the laundromat every Sunday to keep the landlord happy. At night, I learned to sleep through the sound of dryers spinning and teenagers fighting in the alley below. I worked every shift Marla gave me. Showed up early. Stayed late. Kept my head down. One day, she grunted, "You're not bad for a liar." Then slid a to-go box across the counter. Fried chicken and mashed potatoes. Still hot. I never replied to another message. I didn't have to scream at them. I didn't need to demand an apology or tell them how badly they'd broken me. I had a better weapon now: silence. 2 years passed, quietly and steadily, like rain on an old roof. I worked 6 days a week at Dottie's, took night classes in accounting at the local community college, and learned how to keep my head down while building something real. My apartment above the laundromat still smelled like dryer sheets and boiled detergent, but I had a second-hand desk, a mini fridge, and a potted fern named Sylvia that somehow survived my forgetfulness. Life wasn't glamorous. But it was mine. That's when Jonas started showing up Tuesdays and Thursdays, without fail. Always sat at the corner stool, always ordered a Denver omelet, no tomato, please, and brought a heavy textbook with a cracked spine and dozens of sticky notes fluttering like feathers. He had this quiet way about him. Wore glasses too. Big for his face. Smiled with only one side of his mouth. I'd caught him glancing at me once or twice but chalked it up to pity or curiosity. I didn't know how to receive attention that wasn't transactional, but he kept coming back. One Thursday, he looked up from his notes and said, "Did you know your name tag says Noella?" I glanced down. It didn't. I'd written it in Sharpie myself. Guess I've been spelling it wrong my whole life, I said. He laughed. A soft, sincere sound that became our thing, pretending my name tag changed each shift. One day I was Nora, the next, Noodle. Every time he noticed we didn't call it flirting. It didn't feel like flirting. It felt like slowly learning how to breathe with someone watching. The first time we went out, it wasn't even a real date. His study group canceled, and he had a reservation for a new pizza place across town. I was cleaning the counter when he asked if I liked mushrooms. I guess, I said. He blinked. Cool. Wanna split a pie so I don't look pathetic eating alone? It wasn't glamorous, shared slices, mismatched chairs, fluorescent lighting, but I laughed more in that hour than I had in years. Later that night, sitting on a park bench with leftover crust in a takeout box between us, he turned and asked Quietly, do you always disappear when someone looks at you too long? The question landed like a soft hammer, gentle, but it cracked something open. I didn't answer right away. I didn't know how, but I didn't disappear. I stayed, and that was the beginning of something I didn't have a name for yet. Something that felt like the slow stitching of torn fabric, like sunlight finding its way through closed blinds. Not perfect, but real, and real, I was learning, could be enough. The article wasn't even a feature. Just a side column in a regional magazine, Southern Table, Local Voices. The headline read, Diner Manager Makes Big Impact in Savannah's Food Scene. My name was barely 2 lines in. Noelle Wren, manager at Dottie's, has helped revitalize the menu and support second chance hiring. A photo showed me outside the diner, squinting into the sun, holding a tray of biscuits. I laughed when I saw it. Not because it was funny, but because it felt distant. Like reading about a version of myself I hadn't quite accepted yet. 3 weeks later, on a slow Tuesday, Maya, the new hostess, poked her head into the kitchen. There's a family here asking for you. My stomach dropped. I didn't ask who. I didn't have to. I stepped out from behind the counter, wiping my hands on my apron. They were standing near the window. My father looked smaller than I remembered, stooped, pale, a man who had lost more than weight. My mother's mascara was already smeared. My brother Eli stood with his arms crossed, jaw tight, scanning the diner like he owned it. They saw me, and something shifted. No regret. Not joy. Something colder. Calculated. Noelle, my mother breathed, reaching out like we'd been separated by war, not willful cruelty. My feet didn't move. I stared at them for a beat longer, then nodded toward the back. Come on. We'll sit. I led them to a booth near the rear, the one where Jonas had first handed me his medical school match letter. The irony wasn't lost on me. They sat, shifting uncomfortably. I didn't offer coffee. I didn't sit. We were worried, my mom started, voice trembling. When we saw your name, after all this time, my father cut in. Noelle, it was a mistake. We never meant for things to go so far. Eli rolled his eyes. She's not gonna make this easy, huh? My jaw clenched, but I said nothing. Let them talk. Let them spin their soft lies and old excuses. They talked over each other. Apologies laced with gaslight. Questions dressed as compliments. My mom cried harder when I didn't cry back. Dad talked about family ties and starting fresh. Eli mentioned an investment opportunity twice. And somewhere between their tangled words, the truth leaked out. Dad had heart issues, no insurance. Mom needed knee surgery. Eli's business had tanked. They'd seen the article. See me. And thought, maybe she has something now, maybe she can save us. I let the silence settle like dusk. You're not here because you miss me, I said, voice low but steady. You're here because you need something. Dad's mouth opened, then closed. My mother looked down. Eli scoffed. I took a breath. My hands didn't shake. 5 years, I said. And not a single word that wasn't about you. They didn't deny it. Couldn't. I stood. I have work to do. If you need anything else, there's a payphone across the street. It won't ask if you're sorry. And I walked away. The tray in my hands was heavy, but not as heavy as the moment I left. Then behind for the second, and final, time. I invited them to dinner, not out of forgiveness. Not even curiosity. Just control. I wanted them to see what I had built. I wanted them to sit in a room they couldn't dominate and try to pretend they still mattered. Jonas didn't question me. When I told him. Just wrapped an arm around my shoulders and asked what I'd like him to cook. Something warm, I said. And easy to chew. We settled on lemon rosemary chicken, mashed sweet potatoes, and green beans with garlic butter. Comfort food. Southern. Safe. The house was small but bright. White trim, navy siding, a porch swing Jonas installed last spring. Inside, toys lined the baseboards, and family photos, real ones, hung beside finger paintings. Ellie, 5, had drawn a son with a smiley face and a dog with 3 legs. Marcus, 2, mostly painted in circles and chaos. They were already seated at the table when the doorbell rang. Jonas opened it. I stood behind him, towel still in my hand. My mother was in tears before she crossed the threshold. My father stepped in like he owned the floor. Eli trailed behind, wearing a blazer over a t-shirt and a smirk that made my skin crawl. I introduced Jonas first. He shook hands, calm and gracious. The kids peeked from the hallway. My mother burst into fresh sobs. When she saw them, your children, she gasped. My family, I said. We sat. We ate. My father made awkward conversation about the weather in Savannah and how hard it was to find decent sweet tea up north. My mother barely touched her plate, choosing instead to stare at the kids like they were proof of a life she'd missed. Eli tried. I'll give him that. He complimented the house, the food, the paint color. But he couldn't help himself. In tough times, family sticks together, he said, glancing at my father. Sometimes we just need a little help to get back on our feet. Jonas looked at me. I nodded once. After dessert, I excused myself and returned with a small white envelope. I placed it gently in front of my father. He blinked, confused. My mother dabbed her nose. Eli leaned forward like a hawk watching prey. My father opened it and pulled out a check. $45.25, he asked, brow furrowed. That, I said quietly, is what a one-way Greyhound ticket from that rest stop to our town would have cost me in 2015. The amount it would have taken for me to come home after you left me there. Silence fell like snow. My voice didn't rise. My hands didn't tremble. I sat straight, my shoulders relaxed. Jonas reached over and rested his palm against mine. You came here hoping I'd save you. But I'm not your savior. I'm not your daughter anymore, either. I'm a woman who survived you. My father's jaw tightened. My mother whispered my name. Eli pushed back from the table. They left quietly. My dad left the check behind, folded neatly under his untouched dessert plate. When the door closed, I let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. Jonas squeezed my hand. You okay? I nodded. Now I am. And I meant it. From the porch, I watched their car disappear down the street, taillights flickering, turn signals blinking like an afterthought. The night swallowed them fast. And for the first time in years, I realized something simple and stunning. They looked smaller than I remembered, not just in stature, but in weight. In presence. These were the people who once filled every corner of my life with fear, noise, and expectation. Now, they couldn't even fill a single seat in my chest. I reached for the porch light switch and flicked it off. No need to leave it on. No one was coming back. Inside, Jonas was rinsing dessert plates. Marcus had already fallen asleep on the couch, clutching his Spider-Man toy like a lifeline. Ellie was stacking napkins with the focus of a scientist. Tables. Clear, I said softly, rolling up my sleeves. He looked at me. Not the way they used to look at me, judging, calculating, but like he saw me whole and good, and here we cleaned up in quiet harmony, a rhythm we'd fallen into over the years. The scraping of plates. The running water. The sound of family. Not blood. My phone buzzed on the counter. Camera feed. I tapped the screen and watched them, still parked across the street. Arguing. My father's arms were flailing. My mother was crying again. Eli slammed his hand against the dashboard before speeding off. Same old performance. Same old wounds, but not mine anymore. I whispered to myself as I watched them disappear. That chapter is over. And it was. No. Final fight. No screaming match. No big goodbye, just a quiet door closing behind them, and a warm kitchen where my daughter asked if she could help pack the leftovers. I knelt beside her and kissed her forehead. She didn't know the whole story. Not yet. One day, maybe. When she's ready. When I am, but tonight, she just wanted to help. And that was enough. My life didn't start where there's left me. It started the moment I realized I didn't need to return to the people who discarded me to prove I was worth keeping. 18. I was hungry, lonely, and abandoned. I never got back home. I built one.